Salute, salute. Give me 1 second, guys. Salute, salute, salute to the troops, guys. Salute to the troops. Happy Black History Month. Like I told y'all, I was going to do 28 days of Black History. And this is day 4, guys. Day 4, day 4, day 4. So we gonna salute TikTok, salute Kick. So we're gonna do a behind the scenes on TikTok, and y'all wanna see the Black History Slides documentary, y'all go support kick.com, exotic lifestyle, guys. Fed with a smile. So I'm gonna let TikTok hear it, and Kick is going to see it. So I apologize if there are double echoes, but Black Legend, Mr. Robinson, 42. If y'all didn't know, let's go, guys. We doing a campaign on TikTok, so let's get some watch hours in. And Kick, we gonna get the video started. Get the video started. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Let me clear off some things because we double recording. And we don't want to have no hiccups in this episode. The topic for this episode: how the U.S. GOV destroy Black families, guys, before they delete our history, which they are trying to delete Black History Month as we speak. Salute, double salute to the troops, guys. So let's get this live started. It's gonna be a kinda lengthy 19 minutes. You already know. Let's go. Black culture untold. So we're gonna let y'all listen TikTok. So see what we got. And the welfare system is ultimately concerned about a guaranteed annual income. In order for that children to get meat and bread, there are so many dehumanizing elements in the welfare system that we're concerned about removing. Ultimately, we're concerned about a guaranteed annual income. And the other thing I think it is very necessary to say is everybody's on welfare in this country. And when it comes to black people and poor people, we just call it something else. When it's for white people and rich, we call it subsidies.
It's no secret, fatherless households are more common in the Black community. A survey from the American Consensus Institution revealed that 67% of Black children under 18 in the U.S. live in homes without fathers.
Hope attention.
Contrast to white children, as only 24% of them live in fatherless homes. But it wasn't always like that. The Black families survived generations of open racism, widespread poverty, and slavery. They lived through segregation and violence, and strong family bonds used to be the norm.
As of 1960, 2/3 of all Black American children were living with both parents. That declined over the years until only 1/3 were living with both parents in 1995. So it's not the legacy of slavery that destroyed the African American family.
It's the legacy of the welfare state.
Between 1890 and 1950, the marriage rate was much higher among Black women than white women. A fraction of Black children lived in homes without their fathers. But everything changed with the expansion of the welfare state. It divided the household and created a dependency on welfare. This kind of reminds me of what President Reagan said.
I've always felt the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
So, what happened? What's the mechanism? Here is a detailed look at how the welfare state played a role in the dissolving of the family structure over the years.
Pay attention, guys. Y'all know they have these. They
Never suit
plenty
the other driver after a car accident. There's a better way to get paid a way bigger check skip through that real
without
quick,
having to go to court
guys.
or pay expensive upfront legal
apologize.
fees. Listen, if you've been in a car accident in the past year, even as
As y'all already know. Let's go. Back to the show,
People
guys.
say that the breakdown of traditional family units, family structures, is a byproduct of Black poverty, not just because there is no man to support the family financially, but also because women tend to earn less than men on average. Of course, the connection between the two is there, but it goes deeper than that. Welfare was a mean little business. It was designed to get people by in a pinch. Public assistance programs, like welfare entitlements, have been a part of American culture since the 1940s. Unfortunately, like in many other aspects of government institutions, Black Americans were left out. In time, Black people could also get financial support, but it wasn't easy. Mothers who applied for checks had to let social workers inspect their homes to see if their conditions were suitable. These workers also had to make sure no man was living in the house. But even if they qualified for support, the amount they received was meager and not enough to build a stable life. In the early 1960s,
the welfare
welfare was not
system,
yet
guys.
common, even in the most impoverished Black communities. In the decade that followed, the number of Black people on welfare went up by 169%. They further increased by 30% from 1970 to 1975. In 1972, New York City, almost 1 out of every 6 residents was on welfare. A major portion of these households were Black. Although Black people were only around a tenth of all Americans, they made up almost 50% of all welfare recipients by the late 70s. A recent UNICEF report showed that many children under 18 in America struggle financially, and African American children are nearly 4 times more likely to be in poverty than white children. Though the number of families receiving cash assistance has decreased since 1996, child poverty rates for Black children in the US remain high. This outcome is not by accident. I studied the evolution of social welfare policies in the US from the New Deal to the 1996 reforms and found that these policies have been discriminatory from the start. And a lot of people can confess to that. This led many Black families to fall into cultural and economic ruin. In a short period, healthy Black people started relying on government assistance to achieve some level of normalcy. But within the city slums, that normalcy was impossible to get. Black children barely knew their fathers, and most were raised by unemployed and unmarried mothers stuck in a cycle of poverty and modest paychecks. This marked a significant shift in Black American history. The consequences were severe for the next generation. Let's start with the Social Security Act of 1935. It was introduced during Franklin Roosevelt's administration. It was designed to create the safety net in the country, safeguarding families from losing their income. It was viewed as a significant part of New Deal reform and paved the way for federal protections in the future, such as the Affordable Care Act and Medicare. This policy had 2 main parts. The first part had social insurance programs that provided financial support to deceased or incapacitated workers and Social Security for retired older Americans. The second part comprised means-tested public assistance programs, initially known as Aid to Dependent Children and later renamed Aid to Families with Dependent Children. In 1962, under the Kennedy administration, ideally, it was believed that as the overall quality of life in the country improved, more families could support themselves without needing financial assistance from the ADC program. Eventually, the ADC program would become unnecessary and gradually phase out on its own. But this posed a major problem for Black Americans. Like any other component of the New Deal, the origins of the Social Security Act were deeply rooted in racism. During the 1930s and 1940s, Black people had to deal with widespread racial discrimination in the workplace. They held low-paying jobs, often paid in cash and off the books. This made them ineligible for social insurance programs. The ADC program was an extension of state-run programs that supported widowed mothers, but mostly benefited white widows. The states decided eligibility and need, and since the separate but equal doctrine was in place, Blacks were still excluded from fully participating. Jim Crow laws and the separate but equal doctrine led to a system with different services for whites and Blacks. But as we all know by now, they were far from equal. States made efforts to cut down ADC enrollment and costs. They proposed residency requirements to prevent Blacks from the South from qualifying for the program. In 1935, there was a hearing on a bill, and the NAACP, an organization that fights for civil rights, expressed their concerns. Southern politicians wanted to exclude agricultural and domestic workers from the bill. This meant that many Black workers couldn't get the support they needed. This exclusion would particularly affect black sharecroppers and cash tenants, who were already struggling to make ends meet. Even though the NAACP was highly against it, the Social Security Act was approved. That's why 65% of African Americans nationwide were not eligible for benefits, and an even larger percentage of these black families in the South were excluded from the program. In the 1950s and 60s, things got even worse for black families. Welfare checks incentivized single-mother households, and there was one rule that ruined it all: the man-in-the-house rule. Black families have long been the victims of income inequality and bad government policies. The irony, of course, is that conservatives pushed black mothers to break their families to get welfare. Before 1968, many states and administrative agencies created and enforced the man-in-the-house rule. This rule basically meant that if there is a working or healthy man in the house, the government can't help you. And they would go as far as to send welfare workers to visit the homes without warning, to check if a man was present. If they found any evidence whatsoever, families lost their welfare benefits. Over the years, the welfare state started dissolving the family structure. Slowly but surely, a man who can't get a decent job and provide a substantial income suddenly believes that his family is better off without him. So, if a man were to lose his job, he literally had to leave the house so his children could get government surplus peanut butter, beans, and cheese. On the other hand, if either the woman or the man, or both, were irresponsible, they faced no consequences for their actions. And it was the taxpayers who ended up paying for it. These things aren't exactly designed to keep the marriage intact. They are meant to divide people. The harm done to the children was massive. Many children experienced the hurt from broken families at such a young age. In 1960, just 33% of black American children didn't live with two parents, but by 1988, that rate went up to 61%. In that time, the proportion of black children born to single mothers rose from 23% to more than 60%. This is exactly why we can't judge government policies based on their ideals, but based on their results. These results, well, left a ton of households fatherless. I mean, think about it. What would the result have been if this welfare policy had applied the opposite of that both parents live in the same home, care for their children to receive government assistance? The welfare state did what slavery couldn't do. It broke families apart. And broken families fuel poverty. The structure of the family can influence the choices children make. For example, boys raised without their fathers are more likely to drop out of school, get violence, use drugs, or go to jail. Girls are more likely to have a child out of wedlock or engage in sexual activities at a very early age. These children are also more prone to mental health problems, which can affect them as adults. A psychology test detailed in Roy Baumeister and John Tierney's book, Willpower, showed that children from fatherless households were more likely to settle for a small prize straight away. In contrast, children with fathers present were more willing to wait for the prize. Experts from the Northwestern Institute for Policy Research challenged that these effects are primarily due to dangerous neighborhoods or poor schools. They found that the direct effect of family structure itself played a more significant role. As marriage rates declined among the poor and working class in the U.S., the institution of marriage has remained strong among the wealthier population, with similar rates to those from 50 years ago. At the same time, the decrease in marriage among the working class has led to a significant rise in out-of-wedlock births, often to couples who are living together without being married. This happens because people view marriage as an ideal situation, but feel it is unachievable, yet they still want to have children. In the mid-1980s, the rates of fatherless households dramatically increased. Today, just 44% of black children live with their fathers. Also, a lot more black children are born outside of marriage. The rates of such cases went up from 24.5% in 1964 to 70.7% by 1994, which remains at a similar level today. Many people blame the expansion of welfare programs for the breakdown of black families. Since 1935, people have had access to cash welfare, but this welfare was quite modest and not enough to cover any of the living expenses. With Johnson's Great Society, which began in 1964, welfare benefits became much more generous and controlled. When I mean controlled, I mean crazy. The man-in-the-house rule discouraged marriage because it provided welfare assistance to mothers if no man was living in the house. If a mother married an employed man, even one earning the minimum wage, it jeopardized her financial support. Benefits were huge. The Great Society programs offered a way out for low-income black families. This could be why, in 1964, only 7% of American children were born out of wedlock, compared to the current rate of 40%. The government urged mothers to keep fathers out of the home and paid them well for doing so. In the labor market, industrialization greatly impacted job opportunities, especially for low-skilled workers. It hurt both whites and black people, but black communities were the most affected. Here's an example. Imagine a city like Detroit, where the manufacturing industry was the top employer, and many black men held manufacturing jobs. Here, in the 1970s, 56% of black men were in the manufacturing industry, but by 2000, it dropped to 26%. Over the years, technological advancements and economic shifts created a demand for skilled workers in other sectors, like healthcare or technology. These new jobs required a higher level of education and
That is
specialized
shares
skills.
today,
The problem
guys.
was the lower level of education among black men on average. As jobs increasingly required education beyond high school, black men faced many challenges. This made it harder for them to adapt to the changing market and find new employment in other industries. White men were better equipped to handle the changing market. They had higher education and a greater chance of securing well-paid jobs in emerging industries. Then there was the 90s gear change. In the late 1990s, efforts to reform the AFDC program took on more subtle forms of racism. Critics claimed that the program encouraged out-of-wedlock births, irresponsible fatherhood, and dependency across generations. During this time, there was a lot of public concern about the cost of welfare programs. Some people believed that the programs contributed to rising taxes and national debt, tapped into public fears, and created a seriously negative perception of people who received welfare. There were a lot of misconceptions and stereotypes about those who lived in poverty. So, the reform bill that was eventually passed replaced the AFDC with TANF, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families. The new bill imposed stricter work requirements, expecting single mothers to find work within 2 years of receiving benefits. There was also a 5-year limit on receiving benefits. To promote traditional family values, teenage mothers didn't receive benefits. But that was not all. If a father were to fall behind on child support payments, they could face threats of imprisonment. The bill restricted the use of federally funded TANF for certain groups of immigrants. There were also eligibility limitations on Medicaid, stamps, and supplementary security SSI.